Everything you need to know about the filibuster in 10 minutes, starting with 1789. New Constitution, new Senate. The Senate could end debate by a majority vote of the chamber, a common legislative motion called moving the previous question. A simple majority of members could end debate and proceed to a vote on the bill. In 1806, Aaron Burr, yes that one, thank you Lin-Manuel Miranda, was presiding over the Senate and argued that the previous question rule was useless and basically never used. Debate should end when there's nothing left to say, not when people become impatient with them. The rule was eliminated, theoretically making a filibuster possible since no replacement rule was ever created to allow ending debate if someone didn't want to stop talking. From 1806 to 1837, a filibuster was theoretically possible but never happened. In 1837, a minority group of Whigs we should bring those guys back. What a silly name. Prolonged debate to prevent the censure of Andrew Jackson from being expunged. This was the first filibuster in the U.S. Senate in 1837. In 1842, the U.S. House eliminates the filibuster entirely, allowing debate to end when the majority wants debate to end, and the world somehow doesn't end. They never bring it back, and to this day, a bill is passed in that chamber when there is a single more yes vote than no votes. The way that it should be. From 1837 to 1917, filibusters sporadically happen in the Senate, but when they do, they completely shut down the chamber, since nothing else can happen until the current question is resolved, and the question can't be resolved until debate ends, and debate can't end so long as a single person wants to keep talking. Technically, the Senate can't even adjourn. Multiple efforts are made to fix this glitch in 1850, 1873, 1883, and 1890, all unsuccessful, because every time someone runs a bill to get rid of the filibuster, it gets filibustered. In 1917, the first major reform to the procedure for ending the Senate debate is finally successful. The Senate adopts a rule allowing debate to be ended by a 2/3 vote. This became known as cloture. From 1917 to 1975, a process for an ended debate is finally in place, but it requires an extreme majority to enact it. And the minority that exploited this fact were the segregationists. In 1922, this prevented an anti-lynching bill from even being debated because the Southerners promised to filibuster forever if it was. In 1946, it was used again to prevent a bill that would outlaw workplace discrimination against black people. The Civil Rights Act of 1957 prompted the single-person record filibuster of Strom Thurmond, who spoke continuously for just over 24 hours to prevent its passage. It passed anyway. The debate over the Civil Rights Act of 1964 went on for nearly 2 months, 57 days. Proponents had to significantly water it down in order to finally end debate on the bill. This is the enduring legacy of the filibuster. 1917, the Senate puts in place a 2-track system which allows the Senate to carry on normal business even while the minority was enacting a filibuster. This only made the filibuster easier to carry out and increased the frequency of its use. In 1974, a procedure called budget reconciliation is put in place which allows the Senate to override the 60-vote rule in order to finalize the budget. Not everything can be thrown into budget reconciliation, but a lot can. Obamacare was passed through budget reconciliation, as were the Trump tax cuts, and most recently, the COVID relief bill under Biden, all with less than 60 votes. In 1975, the Senate reduces the number of votes needed to end debate from 67 to 60. They also removed the necessity to actually speak in order to sustain the filibuster and moved the cloture vote from the end of debate to the beginning. So now, rather than the filibuster being used to keep debate open and ensure the minority is heard, it's instead used as a tool to prevent the debate from ever occurring in the first place by requiring a 60-vote majority to start the process rather than to end it. This 1975 rule change, enacted by Republicans, forever perverted the filibuster from a tool to ensure the minority was heard to one which prevents the majority from being heard at all and allowing the minority to ultimately control the legislative agenda of the Senate. From 1975 to 2007, filibusters become more and more frequent, from happening only 7 times per year in the 1960s to being used up to 40 times per year in the 1990s and 2000s. In 2007, Mitch McConnell becomes the leader of the Senate Republicans. The filibuster goes from being an occasional hindrance to a constant, impassable roadblock. During the final 2 years of Bush's presidency and the first 6 years of Obama's presidency, McConnell's Republican conference more than doubles the use of the filibuster. He outright admits in public that they use it to stop things they don't even really hate, just to keep Democrats from being able to get anything done or take credit for accomplishments. Then they blame them for inaction in the next election. Very successfully. In the 113th Congress from 2013 to 2014, McConnell enacted more than 218 filibusters, including denying all 100% of Obama's judicial appointees, even when Republicans had no objection to the nominee. In November of 2013, with judicial and executive vacancies piling up, Democrats eliminated the filibuster for inferior judicial appointments and executive appointments, but maintain it for Supreme Court appointments and for legislation. Republicans threw an absolute hissy fit about it, despite the fact that they were the ones who turned the filibuster into a circus that it had become. In 2017, with Trump now in the White House, Republicans totally forget that they cared about that, and they eliminate the filibuster for Supreme Court appointees, which allowed the confirmation of Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, with less than 60 votes each. Betsy DeVos becomes the first cabinet member in history to be confirmed with only 50 Senate votes, requiring VP Pence to break the tie. In 2018, Brett Kavanaugh is confirmed to the Supreme Court with a 50 to 48 vote in the second most narrow Supreme Court confirmation in history, beating only Stanley Matthews, who was confirmed to the court on a 24 to 23 vote in 1881. From 2017 to 2020, McConnell makes a big show of opposing Trump's call to eliminate the filibuster, which stymies many of Trump's priorities, including funding for the wall, which he later builds anyway by illegally transferring the money from the military. After Democrats take over the House in 2019, the filibuster is effectively meaningless, because anything that could pass the Senate with less than 60 votes would be able to pass the Dem-controlled House anyway. So McConnell just stops allowing legislation to be considered in the Senate at all, except for the bare necessities. With the filibuster no longer in effect for judicial appointments, and the House having basically no say, McConnell absolutely cranks them out, eliminating nearly every bit of procedure and every bit of due process that might slow them down. From 2017 to 2020, McConnell and the Senate GOP confirm a record number of federal judges. Meanwhile, McConnell uses his authority to prevent anything from being brought to the floor of the Senate unless the president personally supports it, or he has no legal way to prevent it. All of this has meant that, except for confirming appointments, the Senate, and therefore Congress as a whole, has done less in the 14 years than the entire history of the Senate before. Now, it's come time to start talking about eliminating the filibuster, or at least radically changing it. There are several different options being discussed. The first, the elimination of the filibuster, which, again, the House did over 100 years ago without the sky coming down, is unfortunately not on the table, because at least 2 Senate Democrats have said that they are not willing to eliminate the filibuster entirely. However, there are 3 other options available, which they've indicated interest in. Option 1 is your basic talking filibuster. Under the tag team rule, 60 votes are required to end debate on a measure, but only so long as someone is still actively debating it. If at any time the minority is not actively speaking, debate would end automatically, and the chamber would proceed to a vote on the measure requiring only a simple majority. This would look like the classic filibuster, with members of the minority having to pull all-night sessions, perhaps for days on end, but as long as at least one person is there speaking, debate continues. This option would be the easiest for the minority to sustain, but it would also be the easiest for the majority to attack, because while one person is reading a phone book on the Senate floor or whatever it is they're doing, the other party's going on TV to tell the country how entirely uncontroversial the matter is, and how important it is, and that the minority is just making a big stink and throwing a toddler-style temper tantrum over nothing. This is how filibusters used to get broken. This would give the public a much greater visibility into the issues that the minority is taking a stand on, and if they're doing it consistently and or doing it for measures that the public is generally in favor of, then the politics can turn against the minority very, very quickly. Option number 2 is the minority presence option, aka the 40 on the floor rule. In this model, the minority would need to keep 40 members on the floor of the Senate at all times. If at any point fewer than 40 objecting members are present on the floor, a single member of the majority can call for an end of debate, and, in the absence of 40 objecting members, debate is automatically ended, and the chamber proceeds to a vote requiring a simple majority. This would be much harder for the minority to sustain. As much as senators love the occasional grandstanding over issues they don't actually care about, asking them to give up all of their weekends forever in order to sustain the kind of obstruction that they've adopted as policy over the last 15 years would become effectively impossible. Instead, the GOP leadership would have to really pick their battles and would only be able to shut things down for any significant length of time if it's something all of them really, really care about, which actually doesn't include very many things. This would be less visible to the public because the floor video would be pretty boring, just 40 plus members of the minority sitting on the floor for days at a time, taking turns going to the bathroom, but it would be a real sacrifice for the minority along the way. If they're on the floor stopping the business of the country from moving forward, it means they aren't at fundraisers, they aren't at campaign stops, and they aren't out addressing the issues that people actually care about. This is the option I personally favor. Option number 3 is called the 3/5 present and voting rule, or the tug-of-war rule. In this model, debate can be ended at any time as long as 3/4 vote of the members actually present in the chamber. This would work similar to the 40 on the floor version, except that the majority would not be able to leave just a single measure to call foul the second there are less than 40 minority members. Instead, both sides would have to keep their membership close by and ready, because if the minority dwindles enough to be able to act, practically the entire majority would have to respond and get in the chamber before more than 40 of the minority can get there. This, in a normal functioning democracy, would probably be the best option. It's a compromise, and generally favors the side who has more members willing to camp out in the chamber until they get their way. But in reality, this would just be used as a political weapon by both sides, forcing these sorts of contests only when the other side is most vulnerable, such as when one of them has a tough special election contest. So while good in theory, I don't think it would be good in practice. So there you go. There's your brief history of the filibuster, as well as the current debate on how to reform it. I hope this has been helpful. I hope you learned from it. Have a good day.